Hey, this is the week 5 or 6 video. This week we're going to be looking at group by, having foreign keys, inner join, and the on statement. Starting off here with the group by, and I'm going to be using the pgadmin tool this week solely because some of the data that's going to be coming out is going to have a bunch of columns in it. And when I do it in here, it kind of looks like this, which is pretty worthless. You got all the columns here, but it's kind of all over the place. So in an effort to make it look a little more clean, I'm going to be using the pgadmin SQL. If you come into here and you click this little SQL thing, this is how you get to it. So I'm going to be writing the code in Sublime just so that the text will be bigger, and then I'm going to copy paste it into here and you can see the output. So it's going to be a little different, but it's just mainly so you guys can see it a little better. So the first thing we're going to look at is this group by, and basically you use a group by if you're looking to kind of use some aggregate function across some data that's been grouped. And you can kind of group things in a multitude of ways. I'm just going to show you a quick example here. Say we've got the notes table. So if we just start, right, we're going to build a query. And another thing I'm going to add on here is I'm going to try to use all caps when working with keywords, just so you can kind of differentiate those from things I'm actually writing. Notes is the name of a table. Select is a keyword, from is a keyword. A lot of times you'll see, professionals, they kind of do one command per line, and the line always kind of starts here with a command that's in all caps, a keyword. So if we just start with that, and we run that, select from notes. Okay, it says retrieving data, 32 rows. Here's what I'm talking about. We've got all this data in here. So if we start from there and we kind of look in here to see kind of what we've got going on, we've got an author on all these notes. Okay, so basically what this database is it's a listing of authors selling notes, and you've seen we already have like a users table and stuff, so they're kind of linked together, which we're going to see a little later on. But say that someone comes to you and says, I want to know all the authors in the system who are selling multiple notes. Well, prior to right now, we don't really have a good way to do that. It's kind of where this group by comes in handy. What if we say, okay, well, I want to group by the author here. Well, when we do that, we can no longer select everything. I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm going to get an error, and it's saying, okay, the ID, the primary key, has to be in use. Otherwise, you can't use it. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to say, just give me the author back. That's really all I care about. The question was, not give me the entire data, but it was how many authors in the system and what ones are selling multiple notes. So right here, you'll see kind of what we did is we selected the author from notes, and we grouped by the author. So if I take this off, you'll see it'll just give me all the things, just the rows. But when I group by, what I'm telling it to do is I'm saying take all the rows that we get back and group it by one column or multiple columns that I've selected here. So here I selected the author. So I'm saying if two rows that come back have the same author, combine their data together. Make it one big row. Well, when I do that, what actually happens, I can't see, because I can't select this. I can't see the full row. All I can see is this. So kind of what we want to do with that is you use it to run aggregate functions across data. So what do I mean by that? Well, what if I want to see, I want to see the average cost on the notes for each of these authors. Well, I can do that. I can say, what's the average cost? Group by author. Boom. Here's the author, 43. Their average cost is 10. Each note they sell is worth 10, right? Author 28, 6.666. Okay, so that's some average of stuff. Well, what if I wanted to take a little further? What if I said, well, what is the total cost of all their stuff? And how many stuffs are we talking about? So if I run this, we'll see, okay, here's, author 43, he's selling one note at 10. Okay, so the average is 10. But author 28 is selling 9 notes at a total of 60. So they took 60 divided by 9 to get this 6.6 for the average. So we can kind of do aggregate functions across multiple rows of data based on something, right? It's based on the author here, right? This is the first row we're getting back. We're looking at the average, the sum, how many they're dealing with. Like this one, author 1, he has 12 notes in the system at 566.5, selling at an average of 47.2. So this is kind of how the group by gets used. It's by itself not very useful, but when used with aggregate functions, these averages, the sums, the counts, the things like that, it becomes useful. So if we look, the way that if you look in the book, kind of things are ordered, if we wanted to use a where clause on this, the where clause would happen before the group by. So if I said, give me the authors, the average cost, the sum, the count from notes grouped by the author, I only want authors who have an ID greater than 10. I can go ahead and throw that in there, and it'll remove this row. It did, right? There's also another command we can use, which is having. And the difference is this where is going to happen before the group by. So when I say where the author is greater than 10, well, what if I said I only want the ones where the cost is greater than 10? So I only got one back, which is, author 1. He only counted for 7, where previously he counted for 12. His average is now 75.85. So if I take this line out, you'll kind of see what I mean here. If we look at author 1, he had 12 before, sum of 566.5 with 47.2 total. When I throw in this where cost is greater than 10, we're saying only count the rows in this group by that have this cost greater than 10. And a lot of times that's not really what you want to do. What you kind of want to do is say, well, I want the ones where this average cost is greater than 10. Well, what if I throw this on there? Does it change anything? No, it doesn't. It says you can't do that here. Okay, so what you're actually looking to use instead is what's called a having clause. And we can use it in the way that you expect it to be used, which means it comes after the data has already been grouped together. So that in mind, we still only get one result, but now it has all the data in it. So if I change this to 5, now we get 4 rows back, as opposed to the 7 or 8 we got without it. Here's all of them. We got 7 back, right? There's a couple of them that have an average less than 5. Or this is 5, this is 5, this is 3. So 19, 21, and 24 are probably getting cut out here. Sorry if I didn't write that in here when I was telling you that's what I was going to do. So having this having is basically a where clause that happens after the group by. So you can filter after the group has kind of happened. So if we go back to this kind of original question, the original question was, show me only the authors in the system that are selling multiple notes, right? So if I kind of go back here just to that, we know that there's 7 authors in the system. Well, how many of them are selling multiple notes? Well, we can throw a having on here, having a count greater than 1. And what does that mean? It means how many rows are returned in each of these things. So these 4 authors are selling multiple notes, which, if we go back and we run, this quickly, you'll note, let me take that having off there. You'll note that when we count, we're counting, right, how many rows they have, how many notes they're selling. He's selling 1, he's selling 1, he's selling 1. So of the 7, 3 of them were selling 1. So when we ran that, new one that said, hey, they have to have a count greater than 1, right? This is saying that they have multiple results, basically. They're selling multiple notes. Then we only get 4 things back, which makes sense according to everything that we've seen so far. So that's kind of where the having works and kind of how the group by work. Okay, so seen that, this aggregate functions, this filtering after the group by has occurred. All right, let's take a look at some foreign keys and kind of what that means. So I'm going to go over here, take a quick look at this notes table. And you'll see here's the code to create it. Create table notes. We've got an ID, it's serial, we've got a title, description, a file, a course, a school. Created the cost, the currency, the author, the thumbnail, the preview, the year, the term, and whether or not it's been deleted. And then down here you'll kind of see that it's got some constraints. One of them is the primary key, and it's set to the ID. Right, this ID is the primary key. We talked a little about that at the beginning. And now we're kind of seeing in here there's also these foreign keys. And it says constraint, and it gives a name to it, notes course foreign key. The foreign key is on course, so course being this column here, course, integer, not null. And it references courses ID. So courses here is referring to a table that we see here, courses. The ID, meaning if we go here and we look at this table, create table courses, there's an ID column. So if we go back, it's saying notes course foreign key on this course, meaning this data here, whatever gets stored in here within this notes table, references something from this courses table in the ID column. So if we look, another one here, let's skip this one, but we'll look here, it says notes user foreign key. There's a foreign key on the author. So this is a column called author, it's an integer. And it says it references users ID. So we know that in users, create table users, there's a column called ID, and it's being referenced within the notes table. So that makes sense, right? We've seen it even here. This author is an ID, right? 28/1/1920. If I then go and say where the ID is in 1, 19, 20, 28. Then we're going to get back these 4 rows of data. You know, we've got Dustin, we've got Premed4, we've got Chapelin, and we've got Lakesta. These are the users that we're actually talking about when we're talking about the notes, as referenced by their ID numbers here. So within the notes table, we've created a foreign key that says this is a key, but it's not a key in this table. It's a primary key in another table. And it's a primary key in the users table. And so what that means is that the data that we're storing in notes is simply a reference to all of this data, to this entire row, right? When I'm in notes, I'm talking about an author, and I'm talking about 28. I'm actually talking about something in a different table. I'm actually talking about a user with ID 28. Right? I'm actually talking about this person right here, Dustin. If I'm talking about one, I'm talking about Lakesta, I'm talking about myself, right? I'm talking about he's got this password, he was created here, he was modified at this point, email, you know, here's his key, he's active, all this type of stuff, and it references that data from another table. So that's important to learn kind of how to use references between tables. And you kind of saw it in the first assignment that you guys did when we kind of set up the students and the classes, and then a table that linked the two of those together, right? It referenced, you know, the enrollments, and you had the student ID and then you had the class ID that they were taking. And they weren't primary keys on that table. They were both foreign keys, meaning that they were primary keys elsewhere that the data in the enrollments table was then referencing back to. So that kind of becomes important the second that we start to look at these inner joins. So these are primary keys on another table that are being referenced. So these inner joins are kind of where you start to join data together across multiple tables. So up until now, we haven't really done that, right? If I wanted some data from notes, you know, I got simply my data from notes, okay? Well, when I look in here and I say, okay, well, we're talking about course 2, school 5, ID 14, author 1. Well, what if I wanted to know also in this data, what if I wanted to know who that author was, right? So right now that I've got this, but what if I also wanted to include the author data in all of those rows that come back to me? Well, I can do it with a thing called an inner join. And the inner join says, okay, well, what do you want to join? Well, I want to join the notes to the users table. Okay, that's fine. So now this little last part here comes in, this on, and the on says, what columns are we joining? I'm joining notes.author with users ID. And we know that because when we go into notes, we look at this foreign key, and it says the author in notes references the ID column in users. So if we wanted to go into properties and do this a little more GUI style, we can look at constraints, and we can come here and we can see this one, right? Author references user's ID. Okay. So once I do that, come back here, and I run my statement. It takes a little longer this time because now it's getting more data. So what I mean is, previously, right, we had this note, okay, blah, 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 and it got to deleted, right? And here we had this author at 28. Well, now we've got the whole row also included for the user. And you'll see there's a bunch of duplicates, right? This Dustin guy is selling a bunch of notes, so his data shows up multiple times. That's fine. we've now joined two tables together to get data back. Just kind of a cool thing. There's another way to write this, which you might see online or somewhere else. I'm not going to expect you to use this because it's kind of stupid, but I will tell you that it exists. So these two things are the same. So this one we use an inner join. We say inner join users on notes.author equals users.id. This one we say select from, and we list two tables. And then we use a where clause to say where these two things are equal. If I run it, should see that it gives the same data back. Still getting 32 rows, still taking a long time, right? 38 should still go and give us Dustin. Okay, and it does. Okay, so you might see this, but it's not really good form to write this way, so don't worry about doing it. But just in case you run across it, it means the same thing as an inner join. Inner join explicitly, as opposed to doing it like this, right? Where it's implied. It's implied here because it's the default type of join within the system. We'll see that there's some other types of joins and kind of what the difference is between them a little later on. But for right now, if you're trying to join data between some tables, let's go ahead and use one of these, right? So we've got, select whatever data it is that you want from notes, then inner join that with users, and on notes author equals users.id. And just to let you know here, the order that you write this in doesn't really matter. So I could just have easily written on users ID equals notes.author. It doesn't care, just so long as you have the two columns in there that make sense, where the data is properly being referenced. So that's an inner join using an on. So the inner join says which table, the on says which columns. You can have multiple inner joins. So we saw previously kind of that we have this school and we also have this course. So we could, easily have done something like that, and I'm going to kind of flip this one back. And the reason that I've written it this way is just because you've kind of got, the notes are all the first one here, and then the second one are kind of whatever table we're joining. So if I run this big bad guy, you see we're still retrieving 32 rows of data because we're still just selecting everything from notes. But now our row became much longer because we're also saying, okay, I not only want, Dustin's user data, but I also want the school name. So here we're talking about Lewis Clark State College. And then I also want the course name. And here's the course, political science 492. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the course. So we've essentially, got all of the data that's being represented in this notes table now, because the foreign keys that we were using were author, school, and course. And now we've got that entire thing represented here in this gigantic return of a row, right? All the data is there. There's not simply an ID anymore. there's all the actual data. So this is kind of where, we stop using, select everything, and we start getting very specific with what we want back, because otherwise you're looking at so much data here, and a lot of it's duplicate data, right? When I say course 9, and then over here my course returns 9, right? I don't really need either of those. I just need to know what's the subject and what's the number, which is why I'm getting that back. And the reason that it's not stored in this table is because, well, the course can be used over and over again. It can be duplicated, right? Here's another note that's using course 9, which is kind of the purpose, to reuse data. It's much easier to put in a 9 than it is to put in Political Science 492 every time. It stores, it's a much smaller footprint in data, so it makes everything much quicker. So that is a quick look at joins, the inner join in specific. When we get into kind of left join, right join, and outer join, we'll talk about what makes inner join different. But for now, all you need to know is that it allows you to combine data together. But we will see that it only works in certain cases, and that there are other types of joins which will make sense when we see the uses for them. Okay, that's all for this week. Thanks.